Hi everyone, in this video from Count Backwards from 10, we're going to do something a little different. This time, we're going to look at picking the right residency program for you, and really any training program. I want to preface this by saying that this is only my opinion, and this is the thought process that I went through when considering programs in what would be best for me. I encourage you all to do the same, but this was kind of the way that I proceeded through it. I will say I am biased, and I did stay at the same institution that I did my medical school in, and I've been unbelievably happy with my training. As I said, videos like this, if you don't want to listen to the entire lecture and just want a summary, I have listed on the screen below a brief synopsis of everything that I've discussed, but as always, I do recommend you listen, as there are some things that I will emphasize and discuss more in depth that might not be as simple as simply looking at the screen. So the first piece of advice that I have is you want to try and get an idea of your goals after residency. The reason this becomes important is because you can only decide what program would fit your best interest if you know what your interests after are. Some people may want private practice. I'm more interested in programs that align with a more academic model. Some people may want certain fellowships that programs offer. Others may want things where they can publish and do research, while others might just want to see what a community is like because they plan on going back and practicing or going somewhere to practice in their smaller communities. Because they have goals of differ from person to person, obviously priorities change, but it's good to have some type of idea as to where you want to go in order to find a program and a path that fits you best. Now, step two, and something that comes up a lot, is does a program offer fellowships? The reality is all fellowships except for chronic pain and cardiothoracic have more unmatched spots every year than applicants going into them, meaning that if you want to pursue any of the fellowships aside from those two, cardiac and chronic pain, there are always going to be spots available, pediatrics, critical care, OB, etc. Now, having fellows and not having fellows can be good or bad depending on the way that you look at it. Some people think that because you have a fellowship, you have enough volume, and that can be very enticing to people that, oh, well, you do tons and tons of blocks, so it would be great if I wanted to do regional. But in all actuality, a residency cannot exist unless its residents get the case numbers that they need. This implies then that no matter where you go, you will get your minimum required cases. And if you decide that you want a certain fellowship, you will literally do an entire year of just those cases. So it's not something that I would be particularly worried about. The other side is that if a program doesn't have fellows, it means that the residents get the opportunity to do all those cases. If you don't have a pediatric fellowship, it means you get to do the premature babies that need emergent gastrostomy tubes. It means that you get to do the heart transplants and lung transplants. It means you get to do the major hepatectomies and interesting blocks and whatever other cases. There's no fellow to take them from the resident pool. Now, the next thing that comes up sometimes is the fellowship match rate. And again, this is another thing that I thought about. This is something that does come up, especially in relation to pain and cardiothoracic. So those are the two most competitive fellowships, and sometimes it may benefit an individual who's interested in one of them to be at a program that does offer one of those fellowships, as they're getting harder and harder to get spots. That being said, and I know anecdotes are not the same as published data, but when I was a CA1, all three applicants for cardiac matched into their choices, and I myself pursuing cardiac and critical care in 2021 and 2020 and 2021 got my first choice at Massachusetts General. So despite coming from a program that does not have the cardiothoracic fellowship or critical care fellowship, it worked out. So it doesn't mean that if your program doesn't have it, you can't match into it. For the other fellowship specialties, as I mentioned, there are usually more fellowship spots than are applicants, so it's easier to get what you want. Now, another thing that was very important to me was working with an underserved population, usually in the inner city, specifically at a level 1 trauma center. Having worked in an underserved community, I oftentimes see patients in disease states that are very late stages due to lack of primary care. This would mean that even simple cases like a lap appy would be slightly more complicated than otherwise if it were, a bread and butter, normal, healthy patient. But my thought was that having this training would make me more comfortable when I was practicing independently. Along with this, the Level 1 Trauma Center offers the opportunity to deal with MTP on a regular basis. This stands for Massive Transfusion Protocol, and dealing with patients who are shot or stabbed or major accidents that require very large amounts of blood products. Again, I felt that this would be important for my training because it means that when I go into private practice or whatever kind of practice on my own and encounter something like a massive hemorrhage and an unexpected placenta accreta or a major bleed that wasn't anticipated, I would be comfortable and ready to take care of the patient. Also, if I were to get a job at a level 1 trauma center, I'd be comfortable seeing those cases, having done them before. Now, the last thing that was important to me was, does the program do transplants? Liver, kidney, pancreas, heart, and lung. And these are cases that before I decided to do cardiothoracic fellowship, and had I not decided to do it, then I might not ever have the chance to see again. It was important to me to be able to experience cases like this so that I would be ready for anything, when I go out and practice. Liver transplants, especially because the enormous fluid shifts occur with these patients, they tend to be very, very sick between their coagulopathies and other comorbidities. So other things that people look at, and these weren't so important to me, but definitely things that come up for others, is work hours and work-life balance. Some people want a system where they're going to leave every day at a certain time, and this benefits them in a sense that it allows you to plan your schedule much easier for your life. It also allots you certain amounts of study time every day that you can guarantee on. Other programs have relief systems, and you may not be getting out until late some days, early other days, which can make maintaining a normal work-life balance sometimes a little more difficult. Some programs also offer moonlighting or overtime, which is a way to make some extra money during residency, and some people really enjoy the opportunity. It's especially important sometimes if you're living in an expensive city or you're living in a household with other people that you have to help support. Next, location, another big thing. Some people look for big cities, but at the end of the day, you want to be in a place where you're happy when you're not in the hospital, because not all of your time is going to be in the hospital. And when you're out, you want to make sure that you can enjoy the life that you have. Finally, and I know it may be difficult unless you're doing an away rotation somewhere, but you want to find a program where there are residents and attendings that you look at and say, that's the kind of doctor I want to be when I'm done training. I think that's probably the most important take-home point of finding a program, because surrounding yourself with those kinds of residents and those kinds of attendings will really help you achieve your goal, which is really to be the kind of anesthesiologist that you would want taking care of you or your family member. And so when you go to a program and you see those attendings and you see those residents, you're like, that's what I want to be like when I'm done. I think that's usually a pretty good indicator of somewhere where you may want to be. So I'm unbelievably happy with the training that I've received. I feel prepared to practice, even though I still have 2 years of fellowship to come. But again, these were just my thoughts and how I proceeded through the decision-making tree of choosing a program that was right for me. That's all for choosing a program that's right for you. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to write to us. Follow us on Instagram at CountBackwards from 10. If you're interested in getting involved, we'd love to hear from you. And as always, stay tuned for the next video. Also, subscribe below.